Welcome to this week's edition of Power Talk. Saccos have played an important role in the financial health of many SMEs, individuals, not just in the country, but in the region. And that is why on this edition of Power Talk, we're really pleased to be hosting Mr. George Ombado, who's the Executive Director of the African Confederation of Cooperative Savings and Credit Associations, here to talk about the work they do, financial inclusion, and of course, there's something big coming up in the Sacco space. It's very good to have you with us, George. Thank you so much for making time.
And thank you, Yvonne, for inviting us.
Great. Let's talk about this organization. Tell us what you do.
Accosca is a body that works with the financial cooperatives in the continent of Africa. Africa has 54 countries, as you know, and 30 of them are affiliated to Accosca. And our main objective is to see that those within the continent of Africa are financially included and are using different tools and instruments to make their lives better. And we believe that Sacco business model is the best model to help them. In Kenya, for instance, we work very closely with the Cooperative Bank of Kenya, Cooperative Insurance of Kenya, the national associations, which is Cusco, there is Cooperative Alliance of Kenya, and all the key players, including the government and the regulatory body, SASRA. So we believe in the power of unity to enable us achieve what we're meant to do in terms of financial inclusion. Yeah,
and financial inclusion is definitely a big mandate and something that the Sacco business model is known for. So let's talk about promoting financial inclusion and how Accosca is able to achieve this.
No, over the past maybe 15 years, you've had different countries. We say that there's huge economic growth across the continent. Some people say Africa there's huge potential. But we also think as an industry, when there's growth, we need to have a model that people actually see growth. At times you hear 7% GDP growth rate in Ethiopia, for instance, but are we able to feel the impact of Saccos at the grassroots? So we feel that for people to benefit from financial access, the banks are there, yes, but Sacco provide a different way. There is the interests are different. We as an institution see that Saccos are well run, and Saccos are big globally, not just in Kenya. Saccos are quite big and are making huge impact across the globe. Yeah.
When you take a look at Kenya, Africa, and the globe, like you said, Saccos are not just big here. Sometimes we think rather local. So give us that perspective, lay that out for us.
I know at times people think that Saccos are charitable organization, but Saccos are meant to help people understand the difference between social and business, have a good balance to achieve this. The biggest Sacco in the world is the Navy Federal Credit Union in America, 13 million members, asset-based 165 billion. The top three, and that alone, if you look at the national budget of Kenya, that alone does not even equate to the national budget of Kenya. And Saccos in Kenya, for instance, if you take the top 10 Saccos in Africa, 7 of them come from Kenya. Highly performing well. There's Kenya Police Sacco, there's Tima Sacco, Mwalimu among the top that we're able to relate with, particularly in the continent of Africa.
Financial inclusion, you talked about particularly for groups such as youth and women. How important is that? And I know there's a link between financial wealth, mental health. So talk to us about what this inclusion means for young people and for women and Accosca's role in this.
Okay, interesting. Africa is the youngest continent, 1.3 billion people, a median age currently of 18-20, Kenya median age of 19. So that means out of, say, 50 million Kenyans, almost half of them are below the age of 19. So we feel for them to be active, I recently had issues in Kenya around Gen Z. How do we engage the young people to be economically engaged? And we believe the model that we have is the best one to assist them in that particular space. When you look at women, Accosca is playing a key role in reducing those barriers, including young people in terms of mentorship, in terms of encouraging young people to be given positions, not position because they're young, position because they're capable of doing the work that they're doing. Also women. Africa is a continent that at times is a challenge when people look at women, despite the fact that somebody is qualified, you are treated because you're a woman, you will not get an opportunity. And as Accosca, we're saying, we are mentoring women to see that they need to get space, opportunity, to sit on the table where people are making decisions, to make decisions that actually affect women. It's pointless to say that you're empowering women, but when you're discussing about finances, women are not included. Accosca, we don't believe in that way.
Okay. Climate action is obviously something that is a big conversation. As you talk about financial inclusion, economic growth, one of the things you cannot avoid there is the effects of climate change. The President of the Republic of Kenya, has made quite an ambitious pledge, 15 billion trees by the year 2032. What is Accosca's, role? And we'll talk about the Congress in a moment, because that's the exciting thing that's coming up. But what are you doing to support this clarion call by the President?
I think this is the biggest disruptor that might affect the continent of Africa. The last 2 years we've been in this space. We've been working with Desjardins International, based in Canada, with the support of the Canadian government. We launched the African Climate Action Plan through the financial cooperatives, where the president of Botswana was part of that in Sacca Congress last year. And the objective is to see that it's not just about planting trees. How do we live a continent that is not just green, but a continent that is sustainable? So we've been doing certain initiatives. One, educating people within our boardrooms, within our membership, to see that there's value in being natural. There's value in terms of ESGs. When they're operating within the space, are they observing those ESGs framework? In Kenya, to be specific, through African Cooperative Development Foundation, which is under the auspices of Accosca, we are working together to plant 15,000 trees on the 11th of October in Naivasha. We've deliberately selected Utumishi girls in Gilgil, Utumishi boys, and there's a primary school within that environment, to plant 15,000 trees. And those trees are going to be planted by people from 42 countries, almost 1,000 plus. So it's a huge statement to say the continent believes that our environment should be more sustainable, should be more secure. And by the way, why Utumishi girls? Because there are many other places we'll have gone to. We feel an initiative that has been supported by Kenya Police, Sacco, and others to support the girls who, again, as I said, the continent is such that at times those of a certain gender are excluded. We want to see that we are actually doing what we believe in.
Okay. Now, you said when you will be planting the trees, and you'll be doing it at an exciting event that Accosca is putting together, and that is the Sacca Congress that is coming to Kenya. So tell us where you'll be planting these trees in this exciting event that is coming up for Accosca in October.
Okay, so thank you. So each year, Accosca organizes an annual meeting for the financial cooperatives. And by the way, all the continents in the world, financial cooperatives have their own meetings. And Accosca, we have our meetings in October. This year, we expect around 2,000 people. 42 countries have indicated, coming from across the globe. And we'll be in Naivasha. We'll have a number of people either within the country, almost 1,000 plus. We expect around 700 delegates off the continent. And one of our major theme in the conference is to see that we are playing a role in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And Accosca gained a UN observer status, and we're saying we're in the middle of SDGs. Next year has been declared by UN International Year of Cooperatives. So we are linking what you're doing in October with what we actually believe should be done.
Okay. That's an interesting one. This is a good time for Kenya to be hosting the Sacca Congress, right? Why Kenya? Why
Kenya? For many other reasons.
Yeah.
One, I'll say actually there are a number of countries that were bidding for these. Kenya, despite what people might be feeling, in terms of economic muscles, Kenya has a good muscle. And we're saying in that space, we can use a Sacco model and what the president of Kenya is trying to advocate for to see that people at the grassroots are empowered. We said, let us involve other continent to see what is the best practice in Kenya. But they were expecting around 14 cabinet secretaries across the continent to grace this meeting. And that's a huge statement that Kenya is doing well in this particular space. I know, Yvonne, at times people question issues around governance, issues around bad practices. As Accosca, we are convening the African Regulator Roundtable, and we've been influencing the regulators to develop policies that are actually inclined towards seeing that there's compliance, there's good practice, and even during this Sacca Congress, we'll be having a number of regulators join us.
Okay. As we close this conversation, let's take a look forward, you know, some strategic thinking into the future. So, you know, it'll be a great Congress, I'm sure, in October with everything that's happening, particularly around climate action, the year of cooperatives. So where do you see things going in the next year, if you're able to make some projections, medium to short-term to medium, and perhaps in the long term, in terms of the role of cooperatives in economic growth on the continent, and what Accosca is putting together to ensure that you are at the center of those conversations? Okay.
First, I must say that Africa is rising. I mean, you need to go through other continents to realize there's a lot of opportunity for the continent of Africa. And it's upon us Africans to step and make our hands dirty to do the right thing. As Accosca, we are saying our model, Sacco business model, is about inclusion. It's not about exclusion. So strategically, in the economic growth, if you look at the region, East, West, and South, World Bank indicates that East Africa, in terms of economic growth, will be growing more than other parts of the region. The southern region is relatively stable. West, not as fast as East. We are saying we are able to use the Sacco model in Kenya and East Africa to see that we are influential and playing a key role in that space. Strategically, I'm also saying that in terms of good governance practices, the challenge that people at times we hear this, that a Sacco actually doing the right thing. There are many good things that are happening in the sector. There are many people that have gotten education through the Saccos. Yeah. Without the Sacco, they will not have managed their education. Yeah. And by the way, education is a public good. In an environment, in Africa particularly, education is not a public good. Yeah. So the citizens must work through a certain formula to see that they take care of their health, they take care of their education, and I think that's where we are headed at.
Yeah, and you've talked about Saccos doing the right thing. So I guess also putting in place proper regulatory frameworks, right? Yeah. For their administration. That is something important that you think you'll be focusing on in the near future?
We are actually, we are also supporting the government. We believe the government of Kenya, for instance, they have something now called the Cooperative Bill, which I believe has passed through the Senate. The Cooperative Bill will be the game changer for this country. And if it passes, other countries will also be able to follow the same formula that Kenya has used. Because it makes the environment easy for the Sacco ecosystem to operate. Let's not forget that Kenya is not an advanced country compared to the Western world. But why is it that in America, in Canada, the Sacco industry is big? I've just given you one of the top Saccos in the world, the Navy Federal, 165 billion in asset base. That's more than our national budget in Kenya. Yeah. And you have a number of people in America who've never stepped in the bank. The only bank they know is a Sacco. And we're saying Kenya, can also do the same. Africa can also do the same. It should be that a shilling in the bank is also equally secure as a shilling in the Sacco.
Yeah, and that's a very encouraging note to leave it at. Thank you so much for joining us, George Ombado, who's the Executive Director of the African Confederation of Cooperative Savings and Credit Associations, also known as Accosca, talking to us about the role of Saccos in building economies in Kenya and in Africa. And we're looking forward to Kenya once again hosting the Sacca Congress from the 6th to the 12th of October, right? Yes. Here in the country, in Naivasha. Once again, George, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Right, that's this week's edition of Power Talk.